All right. Oh, it feels cool being up here for the first time with a microphone. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kip, and I am co-presenting this afternoon with Alec on open source intelligence, or OSINT. So before we get into the meat of this presentation, and also let me know if audio is okay or if I can do anything different. Just a quick agenda on what we're going to be covering today. What is OSINT? Why OSINT? Why is OSINT important? And we're also going to be covering how to OSINT, being the professional process, some ideas on OPSEC and one's digital footprint, some tools that you can use, and some other resources and silly little slides at the end for Q&A and demo time. And this screenshot, by the way, is from the TA Justin. TTA is the open source intelligence class last semester when it first ran, and this semester it's still going. So Justin, I hope we make you proud.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Alec. I am a third-year cybersecurity major. I am a Rochester, New York native. Whoop, whoop. I am an 8-beat measure, which is an a cappella group here at RIT. I'm a big PC building enthusiast, and I'm also a big climber. I actually just started this semester. So it's pretty fun. Highly recommend. And yeah, you can ping me on Discord at Alakazam4.
I do approve the big climber message, by the way. He is a big climber. Anybody who sticks with it is a big climber. Again, my name is Kip. I am in the second half of my third year at RIT as a cybersecurity student. I'm pretty active. I have a lot of active hobbies. I've been climbing since the beginning of 2023. I also have a lot of boards. I have a skateboard, I have an electric longboard, and I play a bunch of string instruments, guitar, ukulele, cello. I'm pretty bad at math, but it's getting a little bit better. And I play some video games. Palworld is currently ruining me. Titanfall 3, the Silk Song, I'm holding out on you. And talk to me about barrels. If you would like to talk to me about anything, barrels included, that is KipTH3GR8 or Kip the Great on Discord.
Quick disclaimer. The information contained in this presentation is for educational uses only. RITSEC nor its members hold any responsibility for any misuse of the information provided in these slides, discussions, activities, or exercises. Just don't be evil. Use the tools responsibly.
We're all adults here, right? Okay, so what is OSINT? Let's start it off. All of these security websites have their own sort of definitions. There's no overarching definition, but essentially it is intelligence gathered and aggregated and analyzed from publicly available data and information. Publicly available is pretty much anything that you can think of. The internet has so many different ways that you can gather information and data. Social media, media, public records are huge. Publications that an individual or organizations have made. All of this is places for you to gather information and then work on that information to create intelligence. Is OSINT legal? Yeah. Is it ethical? Yeah. Within reason for both of them. As in regards to legality, you should be aware of local laws and regulation. It does vary based on the country. And as for whether or not it is ethical, whether it's on an individual or on an organization, just have some common sense and consider privacy, consent, and potential for misuse. Overall, it's largely your own judgment, although there are a bunch of organizations that have also produced documents on the ethicalness of OSINT.
So now that we've kind of talked about what OSINT is, we're going to talk about why it's actually important. So basically, there's a lot of good and bad uses to open source intelligence, right? So the good kind of being, security and defense, general investigation, all these sort of things, research and education included. Commonly in like a corporate environment, You might be using open source intelligence to gather some intel on like a competitor. Let's say they're releasing a new product in the next month. Using your open source intelligence skills, you can kind of figure out exactly when that product is being displayed, what kind of features it might have. Kind of gives you a leg up on the competition. The bad is kind of stalking 101. Don't do it. It's bad. We don't want any privacy invasion or disinformation in the club. So be nice.
Or anywhere for that matter. And while we're talking about this, we also wanted to include a bit on social engineering. Even though social engineering in and of itself isn't a critical part of OSINT, it is a good skill to have in regards to OSINT. We've all experienced a bit of social engineering before, especially as students here at RIT. Phishing, I'm sure a lot of us have been here at some point when an RIT account was compromised and sent out emails about $70 per hour co-ops and told to put your information at a website somewhere. That's an example of phishing. And phishing is essentially phishing, but with voice, over the phone, for example, or over voicemail. It pretty much preys on the human instinct that it's hard to say no. You can set up a lot of pretext, which is also here, in order to craft the scenario that you call in for. You can have the crying child in the background. You can have the scenario set up where it's just the person that you're contacting is trying to respond urgently to something that needs to get fixed quickly. If it applies, it's also important to consider your physicality, how you look, how you dress. Are you wearing a high-vis vest and are you carrying a ladder? Does it apply in the scenario? That's also something to consider. And going into the next slide, it's also important to consider sock puppets, and those are particularly applicable to social media. And sock puppets are basically, within pretext, you generate the answers for questions like, who's your manager? Or why are you here? Who do you work for?
So a little social engineering example. This one's very simple, but it kind of displays the points that we've been talking about with social engineering. So let's say we have some anonymous attackers, okay? And these individuals want to target a certain victim, okay? This victim, right, through some open source intelligence, we can gather from this individual's jacket, right, that they not only go to the Rochester Institute of Technology, but they're also involved in CCDC. And from there, the attackers can craft a sort of email or voice message, right, to appeal to this victim, to make it to seem more legitimate. And in this case, the attackers want some dining dollars. So it's a very, very simple example, but the main point to get at here is that open source intelligence allows attackers to get sort of like a profile on a victim and allows them to craft an email or a voice message that is seeming more legitimate to the victim. Cool.
All right. So now we've established some kind of foundation, a bit of framework for what OSINT is and why OSINT is important. Now, let's talk a little bit about how you can do OSINT and also some things to consider while you're doing OSINT. Alec?
So there's kind of like a professional process that goes on with open source intelligence. In general, it's a good practice to kind of use this process, especially for difficult demos that may exist, right? You kind of want to follow these 5 steps to make sure that you've covered all your bases and your investigation is complete. So step 1 is your preparation, right? What needs to be answered? Whether it's, what is the address of this location, right? just answering, being able to figure out what you need to know first will help you so much in your next phase, which is your collection. This is where your data is going to come from, right? And we're going to go through a lot of tools and resources to help you guys figure out, how to get all this data. And once you have that data, you can process it into sort of like, okay, I have all this information. How do I make it useful to my investigation? And then part 4 of that is the analysis. And this is questions that you originally posed in step 1, right? What questions can be answered with the data that I've collected? And finally is step 5. We don't really talk about this as much in this presentation, but the reporting aspect, how do you actually convey your analysis? Whether it's submitting a flag on CTFD or a big report to your executives.
While we're talking about the professional process, it's also very important to consider OPSEC, or operational security. So while you're conducting OSINT, there is a chance, quite a good one, on the internet that you're going to leave a trail showing that you were there to collect this data. And because of that, it's good to practice passive OSINT gathering more than active. Active is essentially leaving that footprint. And you want to limit your digital footprint as much as possible. We're going to be looking at some tools in these slides coming up, and you'll kind of get a feeling for why a lot of data gets leaked onto the internet. It gets sold to vendors because it just does through the years. So for the sake of if you're working for an organization doing this as a job, or if you're just an individual conducting OSINT, it is important to consider these things. And to segue, people love oversharing on social media. A lot of people don't think about it very much. They prefer that their friends and family be able to access the things about their life easily. But it's also quite easy to take advantage of this as somebody who's trying to gather intelligence. Assuming we're all college students, a lot of college students do overshare on social media, but also so do all of the other demographics for the most part. At this point, it's also very easy to gain a good baseline of information. You can have names, you can have people that the person that you're investigating follows, and you can pivot off of that information in order to use some of the other tools in slides coming up as a sort of pivot area.
Okay. Right, so you may be asking, okay, how do I actually find these sort of accounts, right, all over the web, or not even just the accounts, just anything that you want to search for. Turns out Google Dorking is great for this. I'm sure most of you have heard of this, but it's basically optimizing your use of the search engines to keep, to basically get really specific search results. So hypothetically, if you're looking for a textbook, right, all you need to do is do something like a textbook name in quotes, followed by a file type, and then let's say you're looking for a PDF, right? And as you can see, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of many different ones that you can use. I believe if you like using Bing, Bing has very similar search operators. Yeah, there's some examples there. Very useful tool for finding things using search engines.
Coming off of that, a lot of search engines also have image search capabilities. And this whole slide is on image and video search tools. The picture is definitely worth 1,000 words. Google has reverse image search capabilities with Google Lens. Bing also has its own visual search, and plenty of other search engines have similar capabilities. TinEye, in particular, is very good for reverse image lookup. It is specifically catered to that. It's a website that you can look up. There's also a lot of command line tools that you can use. Within the open source intelligence class that we took last semester, we used FFmpeg as a video extraction tool. And exit tool is also just a good all-around metadata tool. A lot of media, like images and videos, tend to have things like the camera model that was used to take the picture or the video attached in metadata. And there's also a possibility of location data in there as well. So those are some good command line tools. And as for the web browser extensions, there's a lot of stuff that's catered to image and video, as well as just OSINT in general, and photo forensics, and again, TinEye.
So this is where things get a little scary. So some of you may have heard of people search engines. These are basically massive sites that aggregate data all about individuals, right? You can find anything from ages, addresses, emails, phone numbers, even related individuals. So this works best with US residents, in my experience. As you can see, there's many. These are only 5 that I listed up here. We searched for Casey Higgins, and turns out there's only 1 in the world. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Not super sure. But I guess in regards to these search engines, it is actually pretty easy to take off your information. I highly recommend all of you do that. The only thing is you can only do them one by one. One removal on one site isn't going to get rid of them all. So it is kind of a tedious process when it comes to that. Yeah.
For the record, we got Casey's consent. Put that on the slide. G-Hunt. I won't talk about it very much because I know Nathan is going to want to talk about it later.
A couple months, yeah.
It's a free and open source command line tool that also has a Python library. And as the name suggests, it does a lot with Google accounts. Google account has a lot of things connected to it. Of course, all the Google services. And essentially, with the tool, you can input an email or a Gaia ID, which is essentially a Google ID. And off of that, you can get a whole lot of stuff about an account, assuming that it's all set to public. So you can see an account's activated services. You can see reviews that the account has left, Google Maps data, calendar data, and based off of all of that, it can also generate a probable location. It found out that I like rock climbing, so there is that, and I immediately set all of my Google account stuff to private after that. So this is a good example of OPSEC. You should probably set all of Google account stuff to private if you haven't already, because it's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, too, is government and public records. So these are great for finding very reliable information. Most of the time, these public records are organized by county, and they're usually web portals. And I highly recommend you use your Google dorking skills to figure out, where these portals actually are. And here's an example of a very sketchy portal right there. A real property portal for the Monroe County of New York. Please don't look for my house. Oh, yeah, what's up?
One of the portals that is not sketchy is the Canadian Business Listing portal. That one it looks very good.
Would you like the mic?
No, I just want to say that fact.
Okay.
Good to know.
Thank you, Nathan.
So yeah, there's tons of public records that you can find. Such as deeds, power of attorney, mortgages, discharge of mortgages. You can see in the top right, a certain Joseph Abate has a ham radio license, which was distributed by the FCC. So that's pretty cool. And I guess the other thing with these records is it's actually very hard to get them off of the internet. There's a lot of laws surrounding, I guess, what you can post, and I think a lot of organizations are required to. It's not as simple as the people search engines where you can just kind of fill out an email verification and get it removed. It's a little more difficult, unfortunately.
Network tools. If you happen to have a network that you want the OSINT on, there's plenty of tools that you can use. A lot of them are command line. Sure, most of you have heard of dig and NSLOOKUP and map2. They're all good for queries, especially on DNS. Traceroute is good for tracing a packet across the network to kind of look at the network structure. Coolid's registration data it used to be very valuable. Now it's starting to get phased out because data is actually getting regulated. But it's very good for finding information about domain names, dates of when a domain name was sold, that kind of idea. It's very helpful for older websites, but it's starting to get phased out. Nathan is going to prove the mic.
If you don't know or don't want to use any of these tools, a lot of services online allow you to do this without having to like VPN long. I know on domain information.
That is a good point. Yeah, while I was in class, you did a lot of Googling around for these kinds of tools because sitting with command line, unless you really like command line, I do for the record, but in this case I prefer websites, and they do a good job of putting all of these tools together into a web form in order to query off of the website. There are also plenty of tools for geolocating IP addresses. MapMind is just what we have up here, although now it's not as helpful because NAT. You can also gain a lot of information off of website certificates. The screenshot that we have here doesn't show much. I mean, we've got Shahad and such. But one of the cool things you can find is other websites that are covered by the same certificate. So you can find websites that are related to each other without having known that originally. So that's one use case, but there are many for certificates. It's also robots.txt is also very cool. Essentially, most if not all websites have a robots.txt file, and any of the sub-sites on that site that are in robots.txt cannot be found by search engines or web scrapers. So it's a good idea to always check this text file if you're doing OSINT on a specific site, because Google or any other search engine you would have used wouldn't have found the sites in that file.
Yeah, so, delay? Oh, there we go. So Shodan is basically a massive database of basically open or vulnerable devices all over the country, or not the country, the world. And basically, it's free to a degree. It kind of limits your search results and functionality. Otherwise, I think it's $49 a year or a month, one of those. But essentially, it gives you very powerful search capabilities using the scan results, right? And this is basically how people find open CCTV cameras all over the world. Please use this tool with caution. There's a lot of stuff out there, so be careful.
Oh God, this.
The harvester is so the harvester is essentially, you can think of it like a command line search engine, but because it's command line, it's very easy to automate. It also has the raw product is very powerful. Like this command in the screenshot invokes the harvester. We're looking at the domain tally.org. We're limiting search results to 500, and we're using Google as the search engine. And it just goes. And you can grep that, you can cat that like from a file. It's just very powerful. It's a great way to gather a lot of information and data. And at least as of a year ago, this is true. One of the developers that maintains the tool is an RITSEC alum, which is pretty cool. Definitely check this one out.
Yeah, so Spiderfoot kind of automates a lot of the searches that you would do with more individualized tools. Basically, you can do automatic scans on anything from emails to usernames, phone numbers, IP addresses, domains, and it also helps give you a nice report of results. And I guess, yeah, it's a pretty good tool, but in terms of its reliability, it can be kind of questionable. If you want to dive into like a more specific like site or piece of information, it might be better to use a more individualized tool than something automated like Spiderfoot.
Huntfleet. Huntfleet we were able to use in the OSINT class because it was a class, but it is largely a tool for like enterprise and for organizations. So it has a desktop application and it also works with a web extension, no Firefox though. And essentially when you run Huntfleet and go to do a little bit of OSINT, a little bit of searching on the web, when you're done, you can end Huntfleet, the task, and it will have logged all the sites that you went to, and also various selectors that you can clarify before you start the Huntfleet gathering. So this is very helpful if, let's say, you're going to a site that you know isn't going to exist very soon, and you don't want to take a few screenshots or take video, because this also just gives you more data. You can see the PDFs of all the pages that you visited. It is authentic because you can tell that it was edited by a Huntfleet. And again, it is not free, but there are a lot of tools that are free that can achieve some of the things that Huntfleet is capable of or above. And Obsidian is also surprisingly has a lot of plugins that I didn't know it had. It's actually really good for OSINT. I learned something new while researching that. It's pretty cool.
So Maltego is basically, it's also an organizational tool. It's a lot of graphs, as you can see on the right here. You can do transformations on these graphs. The big thing here is it can kind of outline connections between pieces of data that may not have been readily apparent when you had, just lots and lots of data. It's also a great way to visually organize data. And this tool is free. So.
Yeah, it does take a bit to get the hang of it, but it is a pretty cool tool. Definitely recommend checking it out. And in terms of tools and how to use it, that's pretty much it. We do have some extra slides at the end here, though. Take the class that RIT offers. It's pretty cool. You get to learn about a bunch of these tools and how to actually use them. It's definitely more catered to the professional and organizational side of OSINT. You get to learn about report writing as well. At some point, you're going to be OSINTing an organization. They're probably not going to change that project. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You get to look at you get to research some officers of the organization, write a nice little report. Don't do it in 24 hours. Someone might have done that. That was not a good idea. Also, some stuff on the dark web. You'll see. Take the class. Also, Bill Stackpole. This class is taught by Bill, and he is awesome. And James Brigden, pardon. You'll also get to enjoy the polls, which someone is going to have to continue after Justin is no longer TA, of course. But again, you'll get to see that when you take a class.
What happened?
I don't know.
Oh, Zoom, bye-bye.
So cool.
I don't know why I did that, but that's so fun.
I realized that I just put that slide. Would you like to say something?
No, you got all of it.
All right.
I'm working on it.
Thank you, Raina.
There we go.
We are so back.
We're so back.
Yes. Actually,
Sure.
you would like.
If you want to learn more about open source intelligence, do I have the class for you? And if you're a graduate student, you can also take this class because there's a graduate option. Basically, you can learn about many of the tools we talked about here and actually how to use them. You learn more about the professionalism and the ethics surrounding OSINT. You learn about organizational OSINT, which is Kip had talked about, is more about an entire organization or company as opposed to individuals. You also learn about report writing, how to do that, dark web, maybe. Question? That's a great question.
Is either CSEC 140 or CSEC 600.
To repeat for stream, so the question was, are there any prereqs to take this course? And the answer is likely just CSEC 140 or CSEC 600 for graduate students.
But I'm sure that can be waived if you're from a different major.
That's also true. There may be equivalents to that.
Certain emails can be sent in order to facilitate getting into this class, probably.
Yeah, just talk to the professors. Bill Stackpole as well as James Brigden teach this class together. It's actually a great time. I highly recommend. Oh yeah, and the polls. You'll have to figure out what that is. You'll have to take the class to figure that out. So.
And then become a TA for the class so that you can continue the polls. And fly with us. Please, if you want to, if you're able, a bunch of us in RITSEC like to climb. We go to Red Barn on a very not consistent schedule. You get to look at fun, silly little colorful rocks for hours at a time. Anybody at any skill level can really enjoy the sport. And if you're scared of heights, they have a basement, so you can traverse, more go side to side rather than climb up and down. Or if you don't want to, don't. It's up to you. And we definitely consulted Chase K about this, that the Climb IT is definitely coming next year. Climbing and leveraging integrated environment metrics of bouldering.
Big reveal.
Yep. We'll see. It would be cool. It would be nice. Oh, and if you show up, you get to meet my magic card. You should do that.
Is that your chalk?
That is my chalk bag. All right. And at this point, it's time for demos and questions. Questions, if there are any more. Nathan.
Is it demo time?
The question was, is it demo time? The answer is yes. But after questions. Anthony.
How much of this is after like
To answer your question. Oh, yeah, right. So the question was, how much of this is OSINT and how much of this is reporting? Am I getting that correct? Okay. So I guess it kind of depends on what you're doing, to be honest. I think in a more professional setting, it's going to be a lot more about the report writing because you need to kind of explain your findings really step by step, outline everything that you've done to your higher ups or your coworkers. In the case of something like a CTF demo, it's a little less formal. It's definitely you have a flag that you need to find and you find it. So I hope that answers your question.
I have something to add to that.
Oh yeah.
Potentially in coming years, this might change on the enterprise side, and the reporting side might become a lot easier. I'm specifically talking about enterprise / in-house LLMs. So it will most likely get to a point where a lot of the work is OSINT, and you have all of the data. And well, large language models are really good at working with data. So to that point, it's going to become a lot easier to take all of the data and put it into a report format. So we'll see how that goes. Did that answer your question? Awesome. And then we'll get to Adam.
How do you go from data to an actual conclusion that a company can use to make a personal biased individual?
Without becoming a personal biased individual, you said?
Repeat the question.
I'm sorry. I'm going to try to repeat the question. How do you go from information to actual intelligence that an organization can use without becoming a biased individual. Yeah. Working with a team while conducting OSINT helps. Bias has been shown scientifically to be curbed by having diversity within whatever group you're doing. So, in regards to bias in general, working with a larger team and having people cross-reference each other's data and intelligence is definitely a good way to prevent bias and to keep it in a presentable format. Also, just general policy for a team. I mean, assuming we're in an organizational setting here, we're going to have wanted to create policy and workflows for how OSINT is going to work at this organization. So people generally follow that, and there's a good amount of mental diversity within the team. That's a pretty good way to curb bias. Do you have anything to add?
I do. Just something else as well. Don't jump to conclusions. I guess that kind of comes with like the bias. It's like, oh, this is definitely it. I'll put this in my report and send it to my boss. Depending on the nature of the investigation, your findings may have a serious impact. So jumping to conclusions or kind of missing something along the way can lead to a lot of problems. So it's important to kind of analyze all sort of information that you're given and see them to the end. Did that answer your question? Adam, do you have a question? Yes. Pretty good. Beautiful sunny day in Rochester.
I do have something to say to that. My day is so good. Yesterday, while working on this presentation, I broke my 3-week streak for climbing according to my calendar. So now, at 4 o'clock, I'm going to go and climb some little rocks and have a great time. So, you know what? My day is like a 9 out of 10. Thank you very much for asking that. Casey.
In your example, the victim had a very identifying piece of merch. But you guys also let some very identifying pieces of merch.
Sir, repeat the question. In our social engineering example, we had our victim have a very identifiable piece of merch. And the question is if we would also like said pieces or identifiable pieces of merch.
Absolutely.
The mic's not working anymore, but yes.
Yay!